Alright, so supposedly there is an ML5 star boss selector that probably would theoretically come out when the anniversary livestream happens in a couple of days. And this theoretical selector, we don't know if it's going to be like in a pack or something, or if it's going to be free. Of course, everyone is hoping for it to be the latter. I myself am still missing a unit, but we're just gonna go over what the best unit to pick up from this would be regardless. And of course, just because this is all theoretical, this is subject to change and whatnot, yada yada. Okay, so we have 5 units that we could pick, which is Straze, Zio, Harsetti, Belian, and Archdemon Shadow. And of course, some people are going to own all 5 units, so we'll also talk about what to do if you own all of the units afterwards. I would say, of course, you want to pick up your first copy of a unit before anything else, just because all 5 of these units are usable. With a very important distinction that Belian with 3F and without 3F is basically 2 completely different units. Let's start off with the S tier. We have Straze, Zio, and Harsetti up here, and I think you could argue for all 3 of these to be in the number 1 slot. I think Straze is just so strong right now. He deals with tanky teams so easily, especially in Guild War and Arena, with them releasing ARAM and Summer Hua-Young. ARAM, Summer Hua-Young, Straze just obliterates every single, well not every single, but almost every single Harsetti team that you come across, and you still do see a lot of Harsetti. And then you also have Ahmed, who hopefully gets a custom group summon soon, a full one, not just a summer one, where you can pick up Ahmed. Ahmed Straze also just destroys a lot of teams. So Straze is just a very strong, very flexible unit right now, and he is good in RTA as well, though of course he requires a bit more setup there. You need people to push him because he has no innate defensive utility, so he is very susceptible to just dying instantly. But once you get to go, he does such a ridiculous amount of damage. ML Ilnav can't stop him. You just one-shot her through her Penres. It's pretty ridiculous. There is one thing to note though, which is Straze is generally pretty dependent on either Benimar's Tachi or Strike of Aspiration. Give him attack buff. But if you have other ways to attack buff him, or just depending on what you're fighting, you might be able to one-shot everything in Guild War or Arena more likely. You might be able to one-shot everything just without the artifact, because his damage is so ridiculously high. I think I spent like an entire day quick battling Arena with Straze on Symbol. I didn't have any attack buff for him, and I didn't notice until the day was over because I just won every single attack. He is also good for Hunt, for anybody still doing Hunts, which isn't super high priority, but it is worth a mention. So I think Straze is just a really good pickup. A little bit worse if you don't have Strike of Aspiration or Benimar's Tachi at 100 or plus 30 to get 100% attack buff rate, but still really good even then. Next up is Zio. Zio is of course unique in his ability to just nearly guarantee turn 1 because of his 20% CR push at the start of combat. I say nearly because people are getting pretty fast these days, and even a Zio that is like 260 speed is going to get outsped at some point. Even if your Zio is 270, if they pick imprints, you're getting outsped. So you do need to be wary of that, but he's still a decent speed contester into certain teams, and he is a unit that I think gets slammed a little bit too often because his win rate is so hilariously low. I think people just pick him as sort of a panic pick, which contributes to his win rate being really low. For Arena and Guild War, on the other hand, his usage has fallen a little bit in my opinion. I think that, especially in Arena, with ARAM and Hua-Young coming out and being such a good answer into Harsetti, I've dropped most of my Zio into Harsetti teams. I think there's only one that I still use, and very, very infrequently. But you can still use him into other teams, like other teams with openers. You can just open with him. Still, you can push up Frida and do a bunch of stuff in both Guild War and Arena. He works into a lot of opener defenses, so I think he's still a solid pickup, even with all of the other stuff. And then we have Harsetti. Harsetti, of course, the error, but she has her thing where before she was getting banned like 80% of games. Now it's not as high, I think, just because there are some pretty strong units, and now there is ARAM, who kind of answers Harsetti. She is still, like, solid, but she is annoying to play, just because a lot of your games are just going to come down to speed RNG, even if you're the one picking her. And then on arena defense, she's still pretty common. I see her often enough. I wish I saw her more, so we could kill her with ARAM and Hua Young, but she's not as common just because of how easy it is to deal with her. I think if your gear is really good, though, she is a gear gap arena defense unit. There are some people who are out there farming wins with Harsetti just because they check their tank gear versus your DPS gear, and most people lose out on that exchange. For offense, though, you can use her into a lot of opener defenses as well. It's just a lot of these defenses, like Renock plus DKS, you can just slam Harsetti into them and you take away most of their stats because you just, you remove all of their speed. And then you can also do stuff like with Flan, where you turn 1, just S1, kill something. So she's pretty good for especially Guild War offense, I think. I think with Arena, you can use her a bit less just because of how many... the more unit slots gives you a lot more flexibility with your teams, but I think she's really good in Guild War offense. She is a unit, or the only unit here that I am missing, so I will probably pick her up, assuming this isn't paid. So that is it for the S tier, and now we can move on to the A tier, who by herself here is just Belian, and this is only Belian with the 3F artifact, because this makes it so that Belian, who has AoE on her S1 and her S3, plus her S1 has a chance to proc an extra AoE attack, she just spams the extra damage proc that scales based off of her HP, making her deal a lot more damage than she probably should, honestly. Without this artifact, she does so much less damage. Albrus does not even come close to what 3F does for Belian, because you can just build her full tank on a 3F build and she'll pump out damage. Of course, 3F is a collab artifact. It came with Overlord, and there has been no Overlord rerun since. Whether or not Overlord is getting rerun, nobody really knows, but they have been releasing a lot of artifacts recently that are just copies of collabs. We just had one that came out right now, and I don't know its name, but it's a copy of Guardian Ice Crystals, and then we had Strike of Aspiration, which is a copy of Benimaru's Tachi, which I mentioned earlier for Straze, and we also had Mother of All Shields, which was a copy of Rocket Punch Gauntlet. So you could hold out and hope that we get a copy of this artifact again, but just know that if you're picking up Belian, that she is a lot worse, I would say, without 3F. Then we have Archdemon Shadow. Archdemon Shadow, she got a pretty sick EE recently, or relatively recently. That was actually quite a while ago, but she dual attacks with the high stack ally on her S1 every single time she uses it, completely unconditional, which is pretty good because you can soul burn her S1 for pretty cheap to ignore F-res and seal, and then you bring the ally with the highest attack. She is not as good as the other ones, I would say. I think it's a little bit hard to use her right now. And then, especially even in Guild War, you're fighting into a lot of ML Arunkas, and sealing her doesn't really do anything, at least not for one turn, because she keeps her buff that means you can only target her. I think she's okay into some defenses, but honestly really hard to use. I don't think she's usable at all in Arena. It would just be a niche Guild War unit. Now, she has some usage in RTA, but it's not super high. She does probably have the second best PvE usage out of everyone on this list. Straze for his hunt one-shots, or Harsetti also is actually pretty good in Ancient Inheritance, but I don't really think Ancient Inheritance is valuable content. Archdemon Shadow, on the other hand, is really good in Fire Expedition and Dark Expedition, especially with Vene, because you get to ramp up the injury faster, you get to heal everybody more, so she's pretty good there. Just worth a mention, not super important because a lot of units can fill those roles. Fennec is a bit of a broken character, but that is where I use my Archdemon Shadow right now, just in those two expeditions. Then lastly, we have Belian again, but this is Belian with Aurius instead of 3F. Belian with Aurius is not that great, just because a lot of the cleaves these days don't use souls. What is soul block doing to an Amid that pushes up Straze, and then Straze drops a 100k nuke on your Belian's head and she's dead? Not much. But You could still keep the Belian around. It's nice just in case they didn't ban Belian and they pick a soul-based cleave. You can get a force ban out of it at least. So I don't think she's like super, super high prio if you don't have 3F, but like I mentioned, maybe they'll rerun Overlord, or maybe they'll give you the copy that they've been doing, and you could hold out for that if you don't value Archdemon Shadow too much. So this is it for picking up your first copy. Now let's talk about picking up your second copy. Funnily enough, I think it actually kind of just goes in the exact same order. Straze, I would say this is mostly if you're running hunts or if you really like doing arena. You can run one fast Straze, one slow Straze. The slow Straze is, of course, into Harsetti teams. Full damage, just boom, kill everything. And the fast Straze you can run with Amid. You can push him up to 100%. Keeping him fast makes it so you always hit 100%. And you can cut ahead of certain things too. So that is what you could use two Strazes for. Or, of course, like I mentioned, hunts, you could have one on hunt build, one on PvP build. Just gives you flexibility with whether you want to run the highest damage possible Straze or a faster one that cuts more things. Two Zeos, you could have... I don't think a Villager Zeo is really that necessary anymore, just one that like specifically fights against Harsetti, but you could have a damage Zeo and an effectiveness Zeo if you want. I think, honestly, the second copy of any of these units isn't super high prio, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about their alternative builds. But those are like the three Zeo builds that have lurked around at various points in this game. It's probably just damage Zeo or effectiveness Zeo. If you really want, you could build a Villager Zeo. And then Harsetti, she has a couple of damage build variations too. There's damage Harsetti, there's very, very high effectiveness Harsetti, and there's, of course, fast Harsetti, where you just build her really fast. You pick her, people think that you're going to be slow, and they pick slow units, and then you just outpace them because your Harsetti is 300 speed. So that is the options for Harsetti. And then Belian, of course, we've already gone over. There's the 3F build, then the Prot Aurius build, which just if you need Aurius and some defense while keeping the soul removal, then that would be what the Prot Aurius Belian is for. And lastly is Archdemon Shadow, who I just don't think you don't need two Archdemon Shadows. I think there's zero purpose in having two. You could have like a speed Archdemon and a slower counter one, I guess, but it doesn't sound very good. Anyways, that is it for this theoretical boss ML5 Selector tier list. We'll see what happens with it, and hopefully it's free because I would very much like a Harsetti.